So guys, this is a tough video, but it's something that needs to be said. So there is a post on Facebook about Brian Bowers, and Brian Bowers was a higher up in the 40 Hour Film Project and a city producer. And there's a post saying that, he was like cursing at somebody for not being involved in the competition. And now I don't know how true that post is or not, and I'm gonna include like a clip of it in this video, just to show that I'm just not making crap up. But honestly, I'm not a psychic. We don't know if this person is a liar or not. But with the 48 Hour Film Project, in my experience, I know I've expressed what happened to me when I did it for the New Haven competition. That there are issues with some city producers just not being respectful to everybody. There are issues with some city producers being bullies, or people having bad experiences, or people feeling like their film are unjustly disqualified. And that's definitely very, very hurtful, because I know, like, with a lot of people, we're all like filmmakers, we work hard, we have a lot of pride in our work, and we just don't need a system like the 40 Hour Film Project if it's not going to be respectful to everybody. And then also, it really advertises itself as like, you know what, we're all like this really huge big family, we're all this collection of filmmakers trying to push ourselves as artists, when in my experience, they really pick and choose who they respect and who they disrespect. But I think that the point of this video is to say that, really, if you have a bad experience or a good experience with a 40 Hour Film Project, either way, it's always good to do a video on YouTube or social media about your experience. What did you like about the competition? What didn't you like? And definitely, if it's what didn't you like, definitely do a video, and definitely be professional as possible. Like, be a good critic, give suggestions, and importantly, look at other film festivals. Because honestly, with the 40 Hour Film Project, the reason why it's so popular is because there are tens of thousands or even 100,000 film festivals in this world, but a lot of them really don't advertise themselves. Like, the reason why the Oscars, the Cannes Film Festival, Sundance, the Academy Awards, the Golden Globes are so popular, the 40 Hour Film Projects, they all have one thing in common, which is word of mouth, obviously, and advertisement. With the 40 Hour Film Project, they're kind of weird in a way, because really nobody really knows about the 40 Hour Film Project outside of word of mouth, outside of the Facebook pages, and outside of it being like hosted in so many different cities that it has so much public exposure. So, that's why it's been so successful. If Mark Rupert and other people did not have that level of Facebook exposure or online exposure, this competition would have not been around so long. But I do think that as people look at the Facebook pages and see smiling faces and other things like that, it's good when people go on social media or YouTube or Twitter and then say, this is my experience with it. Is it good or bad? And then also there's Filmmaker IQ, who has done articles talking about his experience with the 40 Hour Film Project and if it's worth it or not. And then there's also Film Riot, who is a popular YouTube channel that gives out tutorials talking about how they're not happy that they did the 48 because they felt it was just really, really rushed and really, really stressful, even though it was even though the competition kind of advertises itself as a fun weekend, when really, it's, if you care about quality, this is not the competition for you, because it's just too hard to make a film in a weekend. And then the other thing too is that when you look at a lot of the films of the 48, and I know this sounds kind of mean, they're not that good. And, because you're rushing through a lot of different ideas. And actually, I remember one city producer saying that why there's so many bad films in the 40 Hour Film Project. And they said, well, obviously, you're making a film in a weekend, it's going to be bad, so why not do the competition and make a bad film? And I remember just saying, that's one of the most stupidest thing I ever heard in my entire life. But I think that also with the 40 Hour Film Project, when I say that, is if you really take filmmaking seriously, there are so many other film festivals that encourage a longer duration of time. don't get hooked up on the 40-hour film project. Because honestly, making a film in a weekend is something you do in high school, something you do in middle school, something you do in college. If you really, really care about filmmaking, that's something like you go to a special high school and they say, you get a month or two working on a project. You go to college, you get a month or two. You do it independently and you say, okay, well, I'm going to spend a few months working on a project. Anything that's kind of like make everything the weekend, you're not going to get a good quality film. And that's ultimately because their goal really is to encourage the initiative of making a film. And what you do after that competition is you're supposed to be making films and you're supposed to be kind of going forward no matter what happens to you. But I do think that there's a couple of things. There's some people who just like the competition a lot and keep coming back, which is no problem. There's some people that just care too much about awards, so they keep coming back hoping that they can win and do bigger and better. And then there's other people that come back because they're miserable or stay away because they're miserable. And sometimes what happens is those people have a toxic mentality about this competition, and that's not worth it. And definitely with city producers giving you a bad experience, it's really, really unfortunate. But to those people, I will say that I do hope that you just learn to just write some bad reviews, be honest as possible, and then move on and do what you need to do as a filmmaker. Because there are some people who don't do that. There's people like me where I should have quit this competition back in 2015. And definitely I've had some traumatic experiences. And I still think about the bad times of this competition every single day. But when I do videos like this, talking about how I want everybody to kind of like express how they feel about this competition appropriately, I think that's good because it kind of gives me a sense of, well, now I'm very sure that, as people talk about good and bad experiences, it's going to motivate the 4-hour film project to understand that they're not too big to fail. That if people feel like they got taken advantage of, or disrespected or treated with double standards, that we're not going to remain silent, and that's good because that's good because we are not, because we're not going to say, okay, wait, since you pick and choose, since some people have been unjustly disqualified, since some people dealt with other issues like harassment by city producers and other things, we're not going to remain silent, and we're not going to let you get away with being seen as this utopia for filmmakers, so clearly it isn't. There is some arrogance with how they do things, and they need to be held to the fire for that. And if any city producer is disrespecting you, I strongly, strongly encourage, the number one thing you do is you report it to Mark Rupert because he's the human resources. And if you feel like you're either being ignored or time goes on or whatever, and nothing gets done, and it's fair to put something online, but either way, put something online just so they kind of know that, you're not going to take crap from them. So, I do want to talk a little bit about my situation. So, I did it for the New Haven competition, and I had a bunch of issues. Like, I remember, one year, the first year I did it, one of the friends of the city producer, and I'll use his name, Doug Dangerman, he was saying, it's great that a black man is doing the competition. And there's another filmmaker that was saying, Byron, why don't you want to work with me? Are you just a black man that wants to work with other black people? So I felt kind of racially harassed, and I wish I kind of walked out of the competition after that. My film wasn't that great, so I remember hearing people in the audience saying, what your text, your titles are too big. Just a lot of rude, snippy content, snippy remarks. And then, when my film was nominated, when they read off my film for an award, they said, whatever film Byron made, and they gave it to somebody who only did 3 or 4 seconds of acting on screen. And then the city producer sent me a message about what was wrong with my film, and they said that I was using silhouettes in my movie, and they kind of said that, oh, well, your film was so dark that the judge didn't know who was talking. I'm just saying. So it really kind of felt snippy. I reported it to Mark Rupert, and then a year later, I and then a couple months later, I won awards for another competition. I shared the good news and said, I've been growing as a filmmaker to this city producer. They were very passive aggressive, and they were saying things like, "Wow, you come off like you won the whole competition," when I didn't. And then like a year later, I did their competition again in 2016, and what happened was that on Facebook they're saying that they're happy to have me back. And then they sent me a message saying, you know what, I hope you don't go to Mark Rupert saying that you should have won the whole competition. I hope you learned winnings and everything. I hope you should appreciate my hard work. I asked them a question about special effects, and they said, like, are you working on your project beforehand? Are you cheating? Are you? And then the other thing was that all that kind of got under my skin and kind of hurt me. And I was going through a rough point in my life at that time. So I went on stage and I shared a story that I was struggling with suicide and depression. And I'm trying to use like the hurt and the wounds that I suffer from as fodder for my writing. I remember the city producer kind of chuckling, looking at our friends, snickering, playing their phones, making sarcastic, gasping sounds. And somebody in the audience jumped up and they were screaming at me to shut up. And at the end, they're kind of like flashing their teeth and grinning and winking at me. And I felt very hurt by that. And then I spent a couple of years like being traumatized by that, feeling like I couldn't be a filmmaker, feeling like people were gonna take advantage of me. And then I know like the following year, I was sitting in the audience for one of the events for New Haven, and then the city producer was kind of like covering her mouth and chuckling and pointing her finger at me. And I had a friend that was like a bully, saying that he wasn't involved in the competition. He was actually involved helping somebody else out. So it was just people swerving me or treating me like I'm stupid. And then when I've did it from 2017 all the way to 2022, I would participate in different teams. I would help out, participate over 50 times. And then it took me a while to kind of express how I just had disagreements with the city producer. I told different people like Byron Bowers. I've told other city producers, and they said that they're going to talk to Mark Rupert. They're going to like square this out, and nothing really happened until last year, where the city producer I had an issue with reported me and said that she felt kind of harassed because of me just updating her about how I've grown as a person. And then the other thing was just consistent criticism. So Mark Rupert really took her side. It really was a situation that he didn't make a big deal about it until actually she complained. So it was kind of like a double standard of, if a city producer has an issue, I'm going to address it. But if you have an issue, I'm going to ignore you. And the city producer reached out to me, and they were kind of saying things like, I think your issue in the heart of your heart's Byron is that you disagree with how we pick awards. And if you don't want to be involved in a 4-year film project, I wish you a great film career. And then also, after responding back to some of their emails, they said, like, if you ever respond back to me, I'm going to, there's going to be further consequences. So it really turned into, somebody who was bullying, flipping it so I look like the bully. And also that they didn't respond until she had an issue. So it almost kind of felt like they're ignoring me, or they hoped that I would just move on and not be involved in this competition anymore. Like, just say like, well, fuck it, they're not listening to me. And that's my experience. But there's also a side of, just always criticizing that I've done. And I've learned that, there's something called doing a little damage, which means you leave a couple of bad criticisms and that be that, really. And then you move on to something else. And I kind of wish that I did that, because, you shouldn't be so overly vindictive, obsessed about something. And then also there's people who don't get you. So the 48 may not get me. The 48 may focus on me being a person of color and see me as like the black guy who shows up and whatever. But with all that said, I still got to do what I got to do to be a filmmaker. And I can't let a competition like this stop me from being the best version of myself. So I really think that anybody who's had a bad experience, you don't let that stop you, and you have to keep moving forward. Just that be that, really. I do think it's unfortunate that the 4-Hour Film Project is a competition that advertised itself to be there for everybody, when actually there's a lot of times that it's completely hypocritical. And ultimately, sometimes they don't really care about their filmmakers. They more so kind of care about um, when another person with power has issues. So if there's a filmmaker who makes movies every single year and they're putting in a lot of money, they're winning awards, making great stuff, that person's voice has more power than my voice. If a city producer's voice has more power than my voice, they're going to listen to that one. And I remember like sharing to Mark Rupert one time that I participated in this over 50 times, and he was like, "Yeah," almost like it went over his head, really. And that kind of really hurt me, but it just kind of was like what filmmaker IQ and other people were saying, and deep down, no matter what I've done for this competition, they don't care really, because I'm not making the money, and still I have a lot of skills I need to work on as a filmmaker, so they don't have a desire to roll out the red carpet for me. Their desire to be like, you know what, you're not you're not making us money, so if you're there tomorrow, not there tomorrow, um, you're not a deal until you actually make money for us. So it is what it is. And even like when I was traveling a few years ago doing the 4 Hour Film Project around the country, Mark did reach out to me, and he was kind of like suggesting I get a GoPro or use my iPhone and talk about traveling to different cities. So definitely that would have been a path to actually be successful. And also in New Haven, when I was doing it, people were talking about my race, and some people assumed that I was autistic. So there's also this expectation that I would kind of be the African American autistic filmmaker. I'm actually multiracial. I'm over 8% white, and I'm not autistic. I was misdiagnosed with autism. So, that's another thing too, where people would want me to kind of be, look at me, I'm a black man with autism doing the 4 Hour Film Project and traveling to different cities. Look at the black Forrest Gump type of person, when those things are not true about me. Those things are stereotypes about me. And thankfully I did not kind of play that card. But that was a card that a lot of people wanted me to play in this organization. So, while I've expressed some good experiences and bad experiences with the competition, I will say that I found a way to kind of move on psychologically, really understand that, I have a life outside of this competition. I can definitely just encourage other filmmakers to leave some bad reviews or leave some good reviews and get it out of your system, move on to the next thing. Because, there are two things that happen. There are some people that will leave some bad reviews on Facebook, and it creates an environment of cyberbullying. There are some people who get so mad at this competition, they go to events and they disrupt it. Or sometimes they speak on stage and just blow up because they're carrying a lot of hurt and pain. And it creates an unsafe environment. And I think I also fear that there may be a day where somebody decides to do something bad at a 4 Hour Film Project, like something violent or whatever, because of the competition. Sometimes people get into their ego and hurt people. I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see anybody get hurt and whatever. But they do have to understand that they're not too big to fail. Everybody should be respected. And ultimately, if there are problems, they should not ignore them. And definitely in my situation, I should have brought issues to Mark Rupert early on. And even if he said something like, Byron, it seems like, you kind of respond inappropriately when people upset you. And that's also one of the issues. I would have easily learned to work on myself, or be like, I disagree with you. I need to move on. So, I understand there's ways for me to grow, but I want to make sure that anybody who has a bad experience with this competition, especially, you just find a way to move on from it. And sometimes it's leaving one little review about what happened and moving the hell on. And also not giving up on your dreams of being a filmmaker, because it's totally not worth just giving up because you got hurt once. There are other competitions that will respect you a lot better. And the 4 Hour Film Project, as I said, is not the be-all, end-all for everybody. And if you do a little bit more research, you'll find a film festival that's right and best for you.